Amen. We've been looking at the relationship between 1850 and 1863. We now actually have 4 dates: 1844, 1848, 1850 and 1863. So I've explained my understanding of what 1863 would be, the Second Advent. I've given some reasons why. I acknowledge that Millerite history is not going to pan out or look exactly the same as our history is going to. Extending the Millerite line by 19 years causes us some challenges. It changes the way we begin to look at things, and we need to restructure some of the way we approach these passages. We haven't done any of that. All we've done is created a line in 4 sections, 4 dispensations: a ploughing, former rain, latter rain, and a harvest. We didn't make a distinction here. We'd left that blank. We just said this was former and latter rain, and we'd put 1798, and we suggested 1833, which may or may not be correct, 1844 and 1863. So I'm going to just take this one out. We've got it here 1833, but it may not be correct. So what we're doing is we're looking at this history here between 44 and 63. We went to... The reason we're even looking at this is because we're trying to understand how Matthew, Mark, Luke 24, 13 and 21 work, and the one that can cause you problems is Luke 21. Then you have to factor in Revelation 11, 18. So we've got it here. We've got Luke 21, Revelation 18, distress of nation, the angering of the nations. How we're going to see what those two things are. We've come to a position to say that the distress of nations is 1840. We've got 1840. It's 38 to 40 that we had here. We had 1838 to 1840. This was the distress of nations. And we had some reasons to suggest that. But then we started looking at Loughborough's work, and we saw that in 1848 there's the subject of the European revolutions, or the Spring Revolutions. When that was happening, the third angel's message had matured to a state where God's people were now willing and ready to start sharing these messages with people. As soon as they began to do that, they received a backlash, and people were saying this sealing message is basically too late. And the reason why the conversation happens is because this sealing message is connected to Revelation 7. And in Revelation 7 it speaks about 4 winds, and those winds, which were strife, people could see were the political events that were happening in Europe. They saw that this strife that was happening in Europe was a fulfillment of Revelation 7. And then they made a connection, the opponents, to the Battle of Armageddon, and they saw that these winds that were being blown were the prelude of the great Battle of Armageddon. The spirits were now gathering the people together. Ellen White begins to have a vision in November that year and says, no, we need to formalise this work, promulgation of the third angel's message, and we want to see that it's a work that needs to be done, which is the publishing work. So I think we're okay with that. Then she has another vision in December the 16th. What was she having in that vision? The November the 18th is the publishing vision. What's she seen in December 1848, 16th? What did we see there? Who can remember that? Put your hand up. Sister Joy? So she has this vision. Do you know where it's located? So it's right here, Early Writings 41, and this is December 16th, 1848. And what she's going to say is that if you read it for us, if you have it in front of you.
December 16, 1848, the Lord gave me a view of the shaking of the powers of the heavens. I saw that when the Lord said heaven, and giving the signs recorded by Matthew, Mark, and Luke, he meant heaven, and when he said earth, he meant earth. The powers of the heaven are the sun, moon, and stars. They rule in the heavens. The powers of the earth are those that rule on the earth. The powers of the heaven will be shaken at the voice of God. Then the sun, moon, and stars will be moved out of their places. They will not pass away, but be shaken by the voice of God.
So she's going to separate heaven from earth, and she says that let me see if I can find it. Okay, so all she's going to say is that the shaking of the heavens is in heaven, and the powers of earth rule the earth. She doesn't say any much more than that. Where do we get the concept of the angering of the nations? Dark heavy clouds came up and clashed against each other. The atmosphere parted and rolled back. This one?
And the second sentence, third sentence.
I saw that the powers of earth are now being shaken, and the events come in their order. War, rumours of wars, sword, famine, and pestilence are first to shake the powers of the earth. Then the voice of God will shake the sun, moon, and stars, and this earth also. I saw that the shaking of the powers in Europe is not, as some teach, the shaking of the powers in heaven, but it is the shaking of the angry nations. So she's identifying that Revelation 11:18 is 1848. Are we okay with that? So if we were going to do that, I want to come back to what we discussed before. So if we've got Revelation 11:18, what date are we saying that is? What date? Sorry?
December 16.
Same as?
December 16.
I'm just going to put the year, 1848. Yeah? Is everybody okay with that? Yeah? So, where would we put Luke 25, part B?
1848.
So you want to put Luke 25, the distress of nations, you want to put that? 1840. Everybody okay with that? You okay with that? And what about 26? This one. Plagues. So this would be 48 to 63. We don't know when. Is everybody okay with that? We all agree? Brother Robert?
I think from 50 to 63, based on the quotation we read.
Oh, 50, yes. Yeah, we can go further than 48. We can go 50 to 63. It's better. Any questions? Some of those dates for 1850, they're like November, I think even going into December. I think they actually published a chart in 51 where it's available for sale, I guess. So we could even stretch that to 51, but we'll keep 50. So just want to make sure that we're okay with this structure, that we've got 40, 48 and 50.
I still have some views on some regarding the second gathering and the scattering that took place after 1844.
Okay, so
I really need to know where the mark of the second gathering and the scattering that happened after 1844.
So let's find the passages. What passages do we need? Let's list the passages first. Early writing 74. Where else? 18 MR, page 10. Another one? Is it just these two? Brother William? Just these two? Yeah? So, let's read a couple of more statements and we'll try and clear that up. So I just want to read a couple of more bits. Okay, so we've been reading from 18MR. We're going to summarize that in a moment, okay? But because the brothers asked this question and I've got 74 and 18MR, hold that thought that we discussed at the end of the class, okay? Hold that thought, because we want to see what the shut door is and what the commandments are, okay? So hold that thought. I want to take us to another passage. This is Spalding and McGann, page 1. And the coding is SPM1. So SPM1. I think Spalding and McGann is a collection of letters or documents that he had. I don't know how he gets these documents, but he has this collection of documents and they end up being given to the White estate, and they sort it all out. There's not many of it, but they're all kind of just random pieces of information. Okay, so this is SPM page 1. If you look at this, the section is called a copy of 3 early visions. So there are 3 visions that are going to be spoken of in this section, and we're going to look at the first of those prophecies or visions. And the reason I've put it here is because I'm saying all of these are dealing with the same subject. Okay, so I'm blocking all of these 3 together. I saw that we must wake and cry earnestly for the arm of the Lord to be revealed. It is fatal to sleep now. Remember we spoke in 18MR to arise. Now she doesn't use the word arise, she's using the word sleep. Are we okay with that? Time is almost finished. I saw that it was a shame for us to refer to the scattering for examples to govern us now in the gathering time. For if God does no more for us than he did then, we shall never be gathered. In the scattering Israel was torn and smitten, but now God will bind up and heal them. Virtually identical to early writing 74. We're okay with that? There is one piece of information that isn't in, I don't think, in 74. Did you pick what that was up, if I'm correct? I like it when it says, time is almost finished. Because in early writing 74, she's going to say, time is no longer. And now she's saying, we've still got we've still got time. Whatever those time differences are, I'm not saying they're the same thing, but here she's speaking about time isn't finished, and before she said it is. It's in paragraph 2 that I want us to see. I saw that God had stretched out his hand the second time to recover the remnant of his people. They are these who have been covered up in the rubbish since 1844. I saw that efforts to spread the truth should now be put forth, such as in 1843 and 1844. In the scattering, efforts to spread the truth had but little effect, accomplished but little or nothing. But now in a gathering time, when God had set his hand to gather his people, efforts to spread the truth will have their designed effect, and all should be zealous and united in the work. I saw that a paper was needed, and all should feel interested in it. So there's a lot of information in there, all very similar to this information that we already have. It doesn't tell you when this vision is given. As far as I could locate, it doesn't give a date for this in Spalding and McGann. But when you parallel them to the other passages, I think it's clear to see this is in 1850. It's the same vision. But she gives some additional information, and the additional information she gives, for me, is the dates. She says, second paragraph, he's going to recover the remnant of his people the second time, which means he did it the first time. And then it says, they are these which have been covered up in the rubbish since 1844. So my brother, you're a bit confused about the scattering and the gathering. I got that. When it says, second sentence, they are these. Who are the they and the these? They're the same people. Who are the they and the these? How do you read that? Who are the they and the these contextually in this passage? If I said they, a pronoun, or these, a pronoun, and I said, can you identify who they are? What do you have to do? First tell me the methodology that you're going to use before telling me the answer. Don't try and find the answer yet. Tell me the methodology. If I ask you to identify who these are, what do you have to do? Don't look at the passage to get your answer. This is a general question.
I looked at the previous statement.
So you have to look at a previous statement, because you can't identify something from a pronoun. You have to go to a noun to identify who you're speaking about. So it says, they are these. So if I say they are these, just in that sentence, are you happy that they and these, what can we put here? Equal. Are we okay with that? So the they and the these are the same person or people. So now tell me who they are. Follow the rule that you just told us.
The remnant is people.
Okay, everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
So this is the remnant. I saw that God had stretched out his hand the second time to recover the remnant. So you've got this remnant, and how many times are they going to be recovered?
The second time.
How many times then? 2 times. There could be a third, we don't know a third, but we've got 2. Okay? So he's going to recover them a second time. And now it says in the next sentence, these remnant who he's going to recover for the second time. Why is he having to recover them the second time? What does it say in the sentence? What's happened to them?
They were scattered.
It doesn't say they're scattered. In the sentence it says what? The second sentence. Don't help.
They are these who have been covered up in the rubbish.
So what's happened to them? They've been covered up. So now we want to do repeat and enlarge. So you tell me what cover means. To cover up.
Bury.
Sorry?
Bury something.
No. Repeat and enlarge. Tell me what the covering up is. Okay, Brother Rogers?
Scattering.
So I'm saying the covering up is the scattering. Are you okay with that? Okay, he's not okay with that. Are you okay with that? Tell us why.
From reading the Bible, that I saw that God stretched out his hand second time to recover, and there are these who have been covered up, and by the recovery, we see a gathering.
Okay?
So it also means that the reason that they were covered up should have been scattered.
So let's go one step back. First sentence. The second time, what's he going to do?
Recover.
My brother? It's going to recover. So what is he going to recover you from? Go back to the previous paragraph. What's he going to recover you from?
Scatter.
So he's going to recover you from a scattering. So we're okay with that. So coming back to this, now you're going to be recovered. So now he's going to recover you. This is the second recovering that he's doing. So that must mean we must have been scattered. If you agree with that. So the sentence says, they, the remnant, have been covered up. So if you've been covered up, and it says now you're going to recover, what does recovering mean? In the sense of, if you were covered up and you're going to be recovered, what's going to happen to you? So you're covered by rubbish, so now what has to happen to you?
You're going to get out of the rubbish.
You're going to come out of the rubbish. So what were you covered up by?
Rubbish.
So the rubbish covered you up. So what you have to do is remove the rubbish. So now you are you're uncovered. So do you agree that uncover equals?
Gathering.
I want to put the word recover. So he's going to recover you, and that means uncovering or removing the rubbish, which means gathering. So if you can see that, then you can see the opposite of recovering or gathering is scattering, which must mean the covering up by the rubbish. Are we okay with that? Okay, so when did the covering up begin?
Since 1844.
Began in 1844. So we've just said the covering up begins in 1844, which means the scattering began. When does the scattering begin?
You're asking the same question.
I'm asking the same question. So when does the scattering begin?
It's same.
Okay, so We've got the scattering beginning in 1844. And what's going to happen at the end of the scattering?
Gathering.
There's going to be a gathering. And what gathering number is this? Second. So this is 2. Therefore this must have been 2. So now we have to find where 1 is. She's going to give us a clue. I saw the efforts to spread the truth should now be put forth. So that's okay. So that's the effort is the gathering effort, if you agree with that. Such as. What does such as mean? Like. In the same way, 1843 and 1844. So what were they doing in 1843 and 1844? So they were gathering. So I'm going to put gathering, and that must be 1. The difficulty is that she only mentions 43 and 44. So we'd have to have read around the subject to know when she says 43 and 44, what does she mean, Brother Robert, when she uses the phrase 43 and 44? First angel's message. So I don't know if someone knows where that statement's found. But there's a phrase, she's going to connect 43 and 44, and I think she says something like the first angel's message was first preached, or it was preached in 43 and 44. So someone find that one. So I'm saying this is the first angel's message when she says 43 and 44. If you're okay with that, we'll find the proof text for that. So what does the gathering, what is the mechanism to gather people? If we say this, when she uses the code word 43 to 44, Brother Robert's saying 43, 44 means first angel. So what's doing the gathering? I want to say the first angel. The first angel is the one that does the gathering. If you come back to this history here, what does the gathering the second time? The third angel. So if you were going to say the chart did the gathering, that's what you said a minute ago? Is that what you said?
What I mean?
No, I understand, but you said the chart did the gathering, yeah? So in the second gathering, what does the gathering then? The chart. So you can use the word chart. It works here. We've got that picture work here. 50 chart, third angel's message. The 43 chart is the first and second angel's messages. But my perspective or my argument is that we should not think about the second angel. Second angel doesn't really do much. Second angel is saying you failed the test. It's really the first angel. I understand you can make it the first and second. So, someone found the passage?
Yes, CW.
CW 26.3. 2. So I don't think this is an original one, but we'll go with 26.2. I think there's more an original one. Read that.
The first and second messages were given 1843 and 1844, and we are now under the proclamation of the third. But all three of the messages are still to be proclaimed.
Okay, so if you're okay with that, when she says 43 and 44 in this passage, as one of the brothers just said, this is a direct reference back to the first and second angel's messages. I'm putting the second angel to one side. I think we have to deal with the second angel in a different way. So I'm just saying the first angel's message. So the first angel's message is this gathering angel or gathering message. Just in the same way, when the second gathering happens, we can mark that as 1850. You could, I guess, go to 48 when they begin to do this work, but it's in 50 that we'd really see that the third angel is going to do this work, because they're going to now proclaim the third angel to the world. They've been wondering how to do it. They've been starting to do it with the publications. And so where do we mark the beginning of the first angel? 1798. So I'm saying all of this history is the history of the gathering under the proclamation of the first angel's message, even though she marks 43 and 44. And therefore, if that was gathering 1, this must be scattering 1. And scattering 1, we could argue it in 2 ways. We could say the 2520 or the 1260, depending on the point that we want to make, if you're okay with that. So that's my understanding of the scattering and gathering as we're using it in this passage. So before we read the spawning of McGann, I think my brother over there, he was saying we're in the gathering time, the second. So he already knew about this structure, all of this. And so I asked, how do you know when the first gathering was? And he said, I know it's Millerite history. And I asked him, how did he know? And essentially it's the logic that we've used. But you can use the Spalding and McGann passage to actually proof text this now. I'm not saying you didn't know about Spalding and McGann, but some people didn't. But now we've got the Spalding and McGann, you can prove that this is the gathering period. You can create a really nice structure, and we've not just guessed this, we've not just used the lines. Most people have done this through the lines using logic, and we had the correct answer. All I'm just doing now is showing you the Spirit Prophecy quotes to prove this. So does that help on the scattering and gathering? Yep. So all of this is the scattering. Now, I just want to add one more piece of information. Ellen White says the second time, and I said, how many gatherings are there? My brother said 2, and I said, yeah, there's at least 2 up to this point, for certain. We're going to make an argument in our movement that there's going to be what? There's going to be a third one. Do you agree with that? Okay, so there's going to be a third one, and so this gathering that's, let's put it here, 1850. We're arguing this is 1850. The gathering in 1850, does it work? Does it happen, Brother William?
What's your question?
The gathering in 1850 that God designed, does it actually get fulfilled? No, it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because if we read through back into 18MR, what did we read in 18MR? First passage. The first passage.
That was 10.1.
10.1.
Yeah, 10.1, I remember it was employing the same language as that of our writings, that God had stretched forth his hand, but it says they were dormant. There was that language, they were dormant, they need to rise up.
Okay, so let me read that to us, and then now I'm going to ask the question again.
Yeah.
Said the angel, she is rising, never to fall again. What do we teach? What was God's will?
They were supposed to rise, the remnant was supposed to be gathered. This time they were not supposed to fall again. But I think there is something that went wrong in that they didn't fulfill what God required them to. So that's why you can see again they are falling. But that was not God's will.
So let me ask the direct question. I've alluded to it now. When it says she is rising, never to fall again, so she's rising, will she fall?
If she is rising, never to fall again.
I'll read it as it's written. I asked the angel if Zion should languish. And he says, no, she's going to rise and she's never going to fall again. That's what the dialogue is. I'm saying, is that a true reflection of history?
It is not a true reflection.
It's not. So, does that mean that's wrong? It didn't get fulfilled? Conditional prophecy? this movement that we have doesn't exist, that was true. How are we going to deal with that passage? Because someone's going to come to that passage, because we say scattering and everything we teach, and they're going to say, hold on, this passage says, Ellen White says, Zion should languish. And the angel says, no, it never will. Answer that.
So I think, as you said on Saturday, we are wise. So we know how we can approach this.
So you're telling me you're better than me? Because I'm dumb and you're wise.
I used we saying referring to the movement.
Yeah, you're the movement and I'm not the movement. You're the movement, the we, I get that. I'm saying, thus saith the Lord, Spirit of Prophecy quote, says, Zion is not going to languish. Let me put it that way. She asked the question, will it languish? And he says, no. Never again now. Once it starts rising in 50, it's going to do this. And you're teaching me other stuff. So therefore you must be an erroneous movement, because it's against the Spirit of prophecy. So what's your response?
Really, I don't think this was reflects history.
So you're just going to throw away my quote, ignore it? Okay, well, you've got to give me a response which has some methodology behind it. You can't just sort of say, ignore the quote, wasn't fulfilled in history. I'm just going to call you spiritualizer. You spiritualize inspiration away, or you don't follow God's word. You've got to give me some logic that you're going to do away with this statement. My brother at the back.
I think this statement is a conditional one.
Conditional.
Yes, because there is a way in the Bible God says, my covenant will be with you forever. Like when he chose the priesthood, that I'll be with you forever. But you see that as a certain time in history, it changes. He had promised he's going to be with this priesthood forever, or chosen someone forever, yet it changes in the future, depending on how this person is responding to his will.
Okay, so conditional prophecy.
I personally think, based on the structure that we've been having, we can show that in Christ's second advent was supposed to be 1863. Then the court meant that Zion shall remain standing until 1863.
Right.
So that's also my argument, that by the fact that we have 63, it means the quote was fulfilled. But now, what we teach, I think how we cater for it is, we already said in 1852, the election condition is here. That's how we cater for it.
Okay, so the methodology that you're going to start bringing up now is the Laodicean condition. Brother Rogers?
Okay. The way I will approach it, someone will bring this quotation. I'll be willing to read within and we place it in history. That's in the 1850. And
So-
it was the will of God for his child.
So the first thing we're going to do, we have to historicize this. We have to get this passage and put it into 1850. So we've done that. We have to agree. Brother Rogers I have to agree with him, or he has to show me that it is 1850. If we don't agree on that, it doesn't make any sense anyway. So that's the first part.
Yeah, but this is only one quotation that is addressing the same history. So I'll bring on top of that, I'll overlay another quotation which identifies that as much as this is what God was willing for his people, but another quotation identifies that they soon enter into a laudation condition.
So, is your punchline, this is a conditional prophecy?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to use the argument that it's a conditional prophecy. And we're going to draw in other passages, and we're going to show that they didn't follow God's will. And the way they didn't follow God's will is they enter into a Laodicean condition. In fact, it happens at the same time. Are we okay with that logic? Okay. The reason why it's important to see that is because when you read Spirit of Prophecy quotes, if you're not careful, they can send you into a funny direction, which is a wrong one.
About this one, can you also say that according to this passage, because God had given the third angel message, and we have read the next paragraph that the work was like being counterfeited because there were other agencies, like, and he compares it with Moses and the magicians. Can you say that the message never did the intended work because there were some other counterfeiting movements that were going on?
So even in the passage itself, paragraph 2 into paragraph 3, you can see that there's wording that says things like, I saw that there needed to be a searching of heart among them. The angel said, you're upon enchanted ground, don't you see it? Awake and put on the strength of the Lord. The powers of darkness are rising. Are you rising? Is it not getting the victory over you? So the way even the angel is speaking, he's not so firm now in the second paragraph as he was in the first one. So you can see that he's saying if you don't get your act together, that you're going to be overtaken, you're going to be destroyed. Doesn't use the word sleep here, but we saw that in the Spalding McGann that he uses the word sleep. Then it gets to the third paragraph where it says, let's see what happened in Egypt. And they were doing this this work. Cutting halfway into the paragraph, the signs and mighty wonders of the devil have increased within a few months tenfold, and they will be on the increase and spread until Israel is constantly rising with the message and growing in grace and in the knowledge of the truth. The power of darkness will get the victory over them. So it says, did I read that correct? And unless Israel is constantly rising, unless is conditional. When she says Israel, I want us to see that Israel is not just Bates, James and Ellen. And what I mean by that is not just that small core of people. Israel in this context is whom? Sorry? Just the Seventh-day Adventist, or the people that they're going to call into the movement? I think it's everyone. So, in this passage, when it says 10.3, where the spiritualism is now entered into, where does the spiritualism enter into? Which group of people? It enters into the world. It's not. You can't see that from 18MR. You have to go to another passage to show that. But I want to argue that the spiritualism goes into the world, and what happens to God's church? Not spiritualism. Church doesn't go into spiritualism. We already said it goes into Laodicea. Laodicea and spiritualism are two separate things. So when we say spiritualism goes into the world, and this is talking about spiritualism, the rapping and the knocking and all of that goes on, what's being referred to here is that spiritualism is what's going to be used to destroy Israel, and destroying Israel is God's people who are in the world. We'd say, come out of her, my people. It's that my people that she's referring to here, I would argue. 11.3, God's people are rising, said the angel, never to fall again. Be careful, said the angel, lest the branches be cut off and others are raised up in their stead. So we mentioned that, John 15, Romans 11. What that means is, Israel is rising, but if you're not going to be part of that rising, then what's going to happen to you? You're going to be cut off and someone's going to take your place. So Israel is rising, but you might not be part of that. I saw that some would bear fruit and work for the glory of God. I saw we must keep close to Jesus and fast and pray if we could not get the victory over the powers of darkness. Then I saw that Brother Gorslin has done this damage. We've seen that there's organisation there. Okay, so we've discussed the scattering, and we say in 63 there's the scattering for the third time, and then we're going to say that there's a gathering for the third time. And what date do we place here? 1989. Brother Robert, is this the triple application?
The whole length.
No, I know it's a continuous line, but do you say 1, 2 and 3? No? Doesn't look like a triple application. Tell us what a triple application should look like if this isn't one.
How I understand it is, a triple application is something that the first time it happens, then the second time in a different and separate circumstances, something similar happens, and then again it's going to happen the third time in a different context, different circumstances. For example, when we talk about Rome, I think Rome for me is the classic one. We have pagan Rome, anciently it conquered 3 obstacles. Then we have papal Rome, and then we're going to have modern Rome. So the theme is Rome, but the first one and the second one, they are happening differently.
Okay, so I've got 3. I've got a common thread that runs all the way through Rome, and the way the first Rome happened is different to the way the second Rome happened, but they have similar characteristics because they have to take down 3 territories. And then the third time it happens, it has to be different again, but it must still have similar characteristics. And the similar characteristics must be taken from the previous ones. So this gathering here, this third one, when do you begin it? When would you begin it? You don't have to agree that's correct. When would you begin the third gathering?
89.
And what waymark do you call that?
Time of the end.
Why would you begin the third gathering at the time of the end? What's your logic for doing that? What's your evidence or proof that you should have a gathering that begins at the time of the end? What are you basing that upon? What's that?
Okay, for me, to begin it in 1989, I first of all understand that from it there is a scattering which is associated with the period of time, 126, and it ends in 1989, but I have a second witness that at the time of the end there is a gathering.
Okay, so if you want to do that, I'll go to the scattering then. this scattering of 1, 2, 6, what's that based upon? 25, 20?
What is it based upon in which sense?
Well, I asked, so you got 63 to 89. You can do some calculations, say it's 126 years. I'm saying, so what if it's 126 years? It could be 125 years. It could be any years. What difference does that make? What are you trying to show me from this third scattering? What's your methodology to make this of any relevance to anything? What are you doing? Where are you drawing information from? From the
first.
So you're getting the first scattering to show you the third scattering, and the third gathering you're taking from the first gathering. So you're taking the characteristics of the first and bringing them to the third. And what's the definition of triple application?
Okay, so the way I see it, I think it's both. It's a linear story, and you can also do a triple application perhaps. Previous to your question, I didn't have a definition of what triple application looks like.
Okay, so you know about it, you kind of have a working model, but we don't have a definitive sort of method answer to that. So that's why I wanted to sort of draw that out. And the reason why I asked the question is because I want us to see two things, and it's an important thing. It's been there. I'm not saying Brother Robert has just discovered this, or I've just seen this. Maybe you've all seen this before, but I want to put it out in a more sort of formal fashion. It should be another tool in our armory or in the way we look at things. What we've been doing too often is only looking at things one way. I'll give an example, not this example, a different one. We take an application and we say that application is the original intent, Leviticus 26. And what we do is we create a 2520, which is time, and we get a good answer from that. But it's limited. Now, if you go back and say that that's an application, and you go back to the original intent, which has got nothing to do with the application, because that's not duration now, that's intensity. Then you take this second concept, and then you bring that to the end of the world, not make an application of it, but you use that to see what does that look like at the end of the world, and you come up with a totally different answer. So now you've got two ways of looking at something. Does that make sense? So tell me if you see it this way. Rome 1 plus Rome 2 equals Rome 3. And I guess the way we do that more often instead of using Rome is we use what? Revelation 9 and 8. 9. We use woes. Don't we do that? First woe, what happens? It's all Islam. What happens? When you do the characteristics of these woes. He hurts, he kills, and the third woe, hurts and kills. That's how very basic way of doing that, yeah? So we say that 1 and 2 equals 3. We could say, take that out and we can do this, can't we? Yeah? Which 1, 2 and 3 all equal each other. But we know that we can do this, can't we? Which Brother Roberts is saying linear. Hope that's the right spelling for linear. Linear means 1, then 2, then 3. And if you did that, 2 is not 1 and 3 is not 2. They're all separate and distinct. Agree with that? Which one is correct? If you'd asked the movement, we would say we don't do this linear stuff because we're into what? Methodology. Line upon line. And we're not into progression. But we've been stung a few times now because most of the Spirit of Prophecy quotes that we use what methodology? They use progression over and over again. When does the Tarian time begin? October 1844. Early writings 55. If you're going to do that, we're coming out of Millerite history, going into this dispensational period, and we're going to hit in, and we're going to then go into the end of the world, which is period 144,000. Now you're doing the line of progression. So we want to take both things in. So the reason why I was pushing Brother Robert about this, does it look like a triple application? Because at first sight, I don't think we'd say this is triple application. It doesn't have the feel of it, because this is just like 1, 2, and 3 following. Triple application has these characteristics: 1 + 2 = 3, or 1 = 2 = 3. But when you start looking at this and you see how we create this third scenario, we're using all the methodology that we use about when we talk about triple application. So when we talk about triple application, I want us to begin to consider that we have to consider this linear work. The reason we do that is because how do you get from the history here of 44, 50, 63 to the end of the world? We use the concept of 4 generations, or fathers and sons. We take the 4 generations, which is what? Linear. It's going to teach us how we get from here to here. And we teach that properly, we teach that well. So not only is it a linear description, I think it is a triple application. Are we okay with that? Any comments? Anything someone want to add or ask or clarify about that?
Okay, is between 1719 and 1844, we can see the parable of the 10 virgins. Now, can we fix...
That was too fast for me, sorry.
I'm saying that in 1798, maybe from 1840 to 1844, we can see the parable of the 10 virgins. Now, can we come and fix again that parable in what we are seeing from between 1848, 1850, and 1863?
So, can we do the parable again from 44 to 63? That's your question?
Yes.
Can we do the parable from 44 to 63?
We do it from 44 to 1863. Which history is that?
I don't know, you tell me.
So I think the way you've been looking at it is that for a long time you have told that Millerite history ends in 44. But I'm conceptualizing as one history, 78 to 63. So that parable, when it applies that history, it is just one history.
So, we'll do this. The question suggested that this is history 1 and this is history 2. And our argument has been that that's not the right way of looking at it, but this is all history 1. It's all one history. And the reason we fall into this trap, if I can say it that way, is because when we go to the parable of the 10 virgins, and let me say this, for me, the parable of the 10 virgins is complicated. To me, it's one of the most complex parables that I still can't decode it properly. I don't know if you can, I don't know if you've thought about it. I can't get the history to dovetail into the parable. It doesn't seem to work. I can kind of do it 90%, but then then I see this problem and I think, it doesn't seem to fit properly. So that's the first thing I want to say about that. I'm pretty sure Parable of the 10 Virgins does not work from here to here. And if you ask the Millerites how they understood the parable of the 10 virgins, and they may not have understood it completely correct, when it says at midnight there was a cry made, what did the virgins do? They rose and do what? Trim their lamps. So I want to ask you, my brother, because you said, if we apply it here, can we apply it here again? When does the trimming of the lamp stop? According to the Millerite mindset. We're in July or August, either one. We'll go with August. We're in August, and they say, okay, let's start trimming. What does trimming mean? It means two things. What is one thing? Trimming means two things. One thing means what?
Let the lamp light.
Sorry?
Light.
Not quite.
Okay. Let the lamp burn.
That's the same thing. You just said the same thing. My brother?
Which one?
When you trim the lamps, what does trim lamp mean? Beginning or start? Give me one.
Trim the lamp is like adjusting.
Okay, so you have a wick, and you cut the wick because the end is burnt and you won't get a good light. So that's one part of trimming. The other part of trimming is?
Adding oil.
You fill the oil. You agree with that? When does that work stop? In this history here.
We cannot get where it stops. Because the virgin who were trimmed, they went with their lamp to me. So from that point, it means that the lamp has been trimmed, has been prepared already, and now maybe when there is a time when they will start sleeping again, the lamp will form the soot, so they have to remove the soot.
We're going to apply the parable of the 10 virgins here. Okay, after they trim their lamps, the foolish virgins, in that time period, the foolish virgins go, and then the wise virgins join the procession. So tell me where you mark that the wise virgins join the procession, which is where you're going to mark the end of the trimming. In this history 1, where do you mark that? August. So you're saying in August they trim their lamp, it's all done and dusted, and then they join the procession. Does everybody agree with that? Does anybody disagree with that? Come again. You understand my question?
How you?
I'm asking, tell me when the trimming ends. Because once they've trimmed, they've filled the oil, cut the wick, and it's lit, and that's the end of the trimming, then they quickly run to join the procession. I'm asking, when did that happen in this history? And my brother says, in August 1844.
Yeah.
Agree with that? Everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
Except Brother Rogers, because he doesn't agree with that. Sorry?
I don't agree.
Okay, tell me when the trimming ends.
When the trimming of the lamps.
August 15th. Oh, so you agree with... So you said you disagree. He said August as well. No, he said August. He said August. Okay, so I've run out of time. Is this the second or the third class? Second class, okay. No, we'll close here. Okay, so I lost track of time. It's been a long morning. So remember the question. This is a bit of a diversion, I know, but I want us to think about an important thing we need to do is when we read inspiration, we need to get into the mind of the author. And what I understand that to mean, Jesus says, Paul says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. So we need to think like Jesus. So we need to think like Alan White thinks. And the first angel is an ambassador of God. So we need to see how they think. And too often what we do is we go into these models and we go in with our thinking and we come up with answers which seem clever, which seem appropriate and good. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but you end up coming up with wrong answers because we don't think how a Millerite would think. So that's what I want us to do. I'm not asking you to go back and straighten the line out or anything. I'm not trying to ask you to correct anything. I want you to go back and I want you to tell me how you should be applying the parable of the 10 virgins if you're a Millerite, what they're thinking. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we give you praise and thanks for your goodness. Lord, as we delve into your word, we know that through a miraculous process, the process of creation that we cannot even begin to comprehend, that we can become changed. Lord, may each of us be able to look upon ourselves, even to look upon one another, and to see that even in this short period that we've been together, that we can begin to notice a change. The way we approach inspiration, the way we begin to see things differently, has an effect upon our characters that should draw us closer, not only to you, but to one another. Lord, if our spirits are chafing, if we are discontented or unhappy, for whatever reason, please help these truths to straighten our characters out and help us to come to a place where we can not only be in unity doctrinally, but we can have love one for another. Be with us and bless us, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.